Stephen Hocking, the CEO of the Geelong Footy Club, who's done everything there is to do in footy, been a player, of course, and then at the AFL, and now the boss of the Geelong Footy Club, who just happened to be in the news. So I don't know if it's opportune. The Wisps been working away at Hock for a while. Welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Hock. It is, well, it's a big story. Our audience, we monitor our audience all the time, and I'm sure you hear this. The suspicion is that the Cats are getting a good run from head office. You guys, the news today, of course, is that you've been fined, the Geelong Footy Club, I've lost my glasses, Tim, been fined $77,500 for the lodgement of third-party, or for non-lodgement of third-party links, including club sponsors or associates, allowing players accommodation in Queensland, amongst other things, gifts such as bottles of wine. So it's great that you're in, first of all. We appreciate that. We'll ask all the questions and then you can tell us. Are you disappointed with the way that this has worked out? It's been a very intensive investigation. Do you think this has vindicated your stance, or have you let the footy club and the supporters down to a degree?
Oh, look, definitely. There's a feeling of letting down for sure. You don't want to get caught up in this in these items. The thing I would start with is that it has been extensive, and as far as vindication goes, I'm certainly not sitting here going, "You beauty," and sort of punching the air. We've been vindicated. I don't think that's the response to it from my end, certainly, and from the club more broadly. What I'd take you back to is it's been 6 months worth of work. And if I said to either one of you going to hand over your laptop and your phone.
So was that they got access to your phones and laptops and emails?
Yeah, they were basically they were taken for 4 hours. EY Australia went through those. They obviously have an AI search pattern that has a range of things, and I think it's really important to understand that it was actually that intensive.
Right.
So there's definitely, there'll be a range of people out there that will think, there's a cover-up. I've had a relationship at the AFL. I've worked there. Geelong may have been receiving some favours. It's not the case. It's actually, it's one of the more trying things I've been involved in. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess from your point of view and the AFL's point of view, we believe that they're at pains to say that there's been no salary cap breaches, which I guess is at the very, very serious end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, and the reason why those devices were taken, Gary, was to make sure that they could actually do all that research into those areas, because they basically chase down and try and reveal, potentially any movement of players, any discussions that may be related to, sponsors, player managers and so forth. Because there's always been the question around Geelong, how do you continue to get, some of the very best players? Mm-hmm. And the reality is, we've always sort of stood up and said, well, the community of Geelong helps. Post-COVID really has helped us enormously. But I go back to sort of Brad Otten's, there was a period of time through the early 2000s, we actually had a player from a club in Melbourne who was negotiating to come down the road, and part of the contract was to have a car and a driver put in. That's how hard it was to get players down the road. So that's about 20 odd years ago. Now players want to come down there because it is a place of choice. It's the program we run. Now the important thing is to make sure that that's done appropriately and above board. And this is really what we've worked through with the AFL.
Just a couple of things that are coming through. So Simon Callagher was a Geelong employee who's part of the AFL now.
Yeah, former CFO.
Yeah, so people here are going the links here. Can you tell us about that? Was he involved in this investigation?
Yeah, so really importantly, no. Kept very separate by the AFL. The AFL audit was led by Dave Grossman and Jen McMillan. They look after all the TPP player movement and soft cap areas, and well supported by Stephen Mead as well. And then internally, from our point of view, who led it was Marcus King, who did an incredible job. As I said earlier, when you hand over devices and so forth, not because anyone feels like they've done anything wrong, you're actually going into some private areas of people's lives. So Marcus handled that really well. No, Simon Callagher started at the AFL. We were well through this already. So, yeah, very independent.
So what can you tell us then, if we go to the tin tax, and just to explain to people, because within the infringement was the fact that there were third-party arrangements. Yeah. So can you explain what they specifically were that weren't disclosed at that time?
Yeah, look, I can't go into all of them, Tim, because it'd be getting very personal around our people, and we've tried not to do that. Because it's a club collective.
I get that. Here,
the ownership,
there's a bit of a problem for you there because
totally.
Because people do want detail.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can give some of that detail. Like an example would be that an associate, so a sponsor of the club,
Right.
an individual within that sponsorship group business has access to a holiday house or a farm, and a player or a staff member may go and actually stay there for 1, 2, 3 nights. That's seen as a breach of the soft cap policy, right? And the reason for that is because there's obviously a value that is attached to that.
Right.
Now, all that staff member or player has to do is just declare that at the end of the year, because every club goes through a mini audit each year of your soft cap and your player movement and your TPP, and there's a sheet that comes, and you just need to declare where and what you've been at different times.
Right.
Now, there's a bit of grey in all of that and has been in the system for quite some time. If you have a look at the fine print right down at the bottom of the AFL's statement, they're going to tighten all that area up, and we welcome that. Like, I'm actually really pleased that that's the case. It's on us to educate our people far greater in this area so that they know what they can and can't do. But that is an example of where that's classed as a breach.
Okay, so that's a staff member as opposed to a player?
Yeah, either or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's anyone associated with the football club in administration or playing.
That's right.
So you've got two caps.
And then basically sponsorship.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I say staff member, that's people within football.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Not just people in the rest of the club. It's actually people within football. Right. Because there's a soft cap that governs football.
Okay.
It's been reported that things like bottles of wine, the academy stayed at a farm and trained on a farm with an associate. That's all. That is part of this.
Yeah, it's part of it, Gary. Look, I think what we've got to be mindful of, and I'm particularly going to be mindful of, is not to try and minimise what's going on here. Like, the reality is we've copped a fine. Some people will look at it and say that it's it's light, but the reality is, if people understood just how much time and effort's gone into this, like it's been conducted right across the whole year, and we've been very open and compliant with the AFL, and the AFL have done a fabulous job. It's remained confidential right throughout. It was really important to have that confidentiality wrapped around it, and I'm not going to sit here and try and justify what we have or haven't done.
Yeah, sure.
We've done it.
Is it? And did you guys self-report? Is it? How did this all come to a head?
So at the end of each year, you basically join forces with the AFL. They send in their people. There's a whole range of things that you work through. There was some red flags for us in terms of...
Brought up by the AFL or brought up?
Yeah, look, I think just in general, if you think about what's been said through a lot of the media and so forth, I think other clubs were starting to question, how do you get access to these players?
Yep.
They don't understand how frugal we are when it comes to managing our list and our TPP. Like, we're really frugal on that front. And so off the back of that, we identified this, and then what we did was we said, hey, I think we need to hand ourselves over and open right up here, and wherever this goes, it goes. Like, we just need to stand up here and take responsibility.
So the standards of reporting, and this is an administrative thing right across the board, is that how did it get to this? People saying, well, how did this slip past, and how did this one get here, and how did that one get there?
Look, it happens over time, Gary. I was just talking to you guys off air around just creep. I think that relationships develop, and people drop their guard a little and think it's okay to potentially go and stay at that particular place or take this opportunity and don't really think much more than that. So on us and right across the industry, there needs to be a tightening up. It's probably a bit of grey in it, and we've got to be better in this place, and we'll certainly address that. It may be addressed through potentially hiring a staff member that takes care of this and really tightening the governance framework around it, because we're on the hook now for the next couple of years, and we're essentially on the hook for the rest of our days for what it's worth.
And of course, the big ones are the Cotton On relationship, which is with Bailey Smith, and then your relationship with Ford. I'm sure all the boys drive cars, so just explain how that works, because that's where a large degree of the scepticism comes through. Yeah,
so the Bailey one's a great example. If you see him on a billboard and he is just solely promoting Cotton On fashion, That's independent, but it has to be approved by the AFL, not by the football club. It has to be completely independent. That's between Bailey, his manager, and the AFL. Right. And that's the paperwork that gets lodged. As soon as Bailey's seen on that billboard with a Geelong logo or any link to Geelong in clothing and so forth, that's a breach.
Right. So the AFL will look at the contract and say they then have to, in their own mind, justify commercial reality. Okay, yeah, Bailey Smith's worth, I don't know, $250,000, which we might go, geez, that's a lot of money. But if he wasn't a footballer and he was doing that on his own, then those endorsements as an influencer, whatever else, are commensurate with that fee. And the AFL goes, yeah, no, that's commercially viable. We'll tick that off. If it was $1.7 million, and then they go, okay, that's the deal that stack up.
Yeah, definitely. There's certainly a certain level to it. But I think the other thing that I would touch on, Gary, is it has to be independent. Like it's got to be approved.
Yep.
You just can't decide to do that without completing the necessary paperwork.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about something else? And I mean, you've got a reputation of being a real straight shooter, and I'm sure what's been going on down there at Geelong has upset you in recent times because your club has been associated in stories and headlines that aren't particularly favourable to your football club and your administration. Okay. So another story at the weekend, Carrie Wilson wrote a story. If you look at Bailey Smith and you isolate all those incidents, the misdemeanors are probably minor. You put them all together. And have you got a problem there with Bailey Smith now? And do you need to sit him down and explain to him again what his responsibilities are as an athlete that represents Geelong Footy Club?
Yeah, well, look, if you're referring to Mad Monday, like obviously there's always an
and the stuff before that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Mad Monday is absolutely on all of us because there's a whole range of people that were part of that. There's certain individuals that have dressed up inappropriately, and we apologise and have been quite clear on that, and particularly to Caro. Publicly, for Caroline Wilson, just unacceptable how that was rolled out and treated. In regards to Bailey, we have absolutely welcomed what he's done on field. No question about that. He's been amazing.
No one would disagree with that.
No, he finished third in the best. Second in the Cargin and third in the Brownlow. Amazing comeback off the back of an ACL. When you come off field, like the interest in him is just unbelievable.
I get that too.
Yeah, and I've not seen. He has a very different relationship with social media to the three of us that I'm looking at, and our age profile. I mean, I don't understand it at all for what it's worth, but he works that exceptionally well. There will be a time, in my view, and this will involve all of us over the off-season whereby we just need to,
Has that time come then?
No, I don't think it has. We're really early in the relationship for what it's worth.
Right, okay. But at some stage, the AFL CEO went down and actually met with Bailey Smith because I'm sure he was concerned about his behaviour, yes or no?
Yeah, look, he was trying to manage that in an appropriate fashion. Because there's Bailey's been quite open around mental health and some of the complexities around that, right? So it's not about tiptoeing around someone like Bailey. It's just making sure that you're tailoring it accordingly because one size doesn't fit all for us. Now, if I take you back to that Andrew Dillon heading down, like if we had have had a camera there, it's a Netflix series, that one,
In what way?
Well, it was humorous.
Right.
Yeah, we couldn't get a fire started. You certainly wouldn't take any of us out to the bush, I can tell you that, and get us to set up a camp because and his dogs at the time spent most of their time just sharing their fur with Dills and Chris Scott. It was quite amusing to see it.
Hey, we're going to take our final break. We appreciate you're never going to satisfy everyone. That is the bottom line. Yeah. And there has been some reputational damage done. I know you're aware of that. You've spoken to us about that on and off air. So it is a big couple of years for the Cats to get it right on field more often than not. And now there's some work to be done there. But you fronted up this morning. We appreciate you jumping in.
Yeah, Gary, I always talk about barnacles on the boat. And that's sort of where I've been over the last few months is, in the end, if you end up with too many barnacles on the boat, it's only going one way. Yeah. So, we've got to remove a few of those.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.